Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Peep into Education. I'm Kylie Elizabeth, also known as the Virtuoso Educator. And my special guest today is Rometha Gilmore, also known as Mrs. Educator. And she's going to be on with me today to discuss her educational journey and her role in the world of education. She's an author. She's going to speak a little bit on her new book. And I'm excited to have you guys learn a little bit about her. So I'm going to bring her in. Hi, Ramita. How are you doing?
I'm well. Hi, good afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I had the pleasure to meet you a couple weeks ago and kind of touched base a little bit on why we connected. So I did see Mrs. Educator on social media through her Instagram platform, and I just love the content that you're sharing around student behavior and parent engagement in
Yes.
schools. And you just share a lot of interesting content that I do feel that a lot of us in this educational world probably should watch and listen to, as well as our parents. So Ms. Gilmore, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll get into our conversation.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I am Rometha Gilmore, Mrs. Educator. I've been in education for 21 years. Didn't start out in education, actually started out in the medical field. That didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. So I truly believe that God has a plan. So again, ended up in education on the educational path. So I've been a teacher K through 5. I've been a dean middle school, high school, an assistant principal of curriculum, an assistant principal of discipline, and then I ended my educational career in on the district level as an ELA program specialist for 6th to 12th grade, and then I kind of exited from there.
Okay,
And I
wow.
live in Ocala,
So,
Florida.
okay.
Okay, Ocala, Florida. We are horse capital of the world for those of you who don't know where Ocala is at. And we're midway in between, I guess I would say Gainesville and Orlando. So
Okay.
quiet but big.
Nice, nice. All right. So over 20 years in education, and I'm sure you saw all things, especially being a dean, especially working in the special education world. And so I'm very curious to learn more about some of the content that you're sharing on your social media. So you share a lot on, the parenting engagement and behaviors of children in schools. And we talked about some partnerships between schools and family. So my question is, with your experience in the world of education, what are some common themes that you saw and something that, you really felt obligated to try to tackle while you were an educator?
I think one of the biggest things right now in education is just the lack of parents of support, the lack of support from the district. I think those are the biggest two things that we deal with right now. And I think from a teacher's perspective, a teacher may say lack of support from their administration. And they often don't realize that administration is just beaten to the tune of the district. So just a lack of right now. And I think we are all aware, we can all see from different platforms now, social media platforms, just the disrespect that's coming from our students and then the
Mm.
disrespect that's coming from parents. So they all play hand in hand. And I think that's a big reason why education is in the despair. I would say that it is right now currently.
Yeah, I agree. And the disrespect, I think, is the key word that we hear all the time from basically all angles. And I, kind of asked some of my other peers and people that I've spoken with, like, why do we think the level of the disrespect got to where it is today? And, some topics, were a lack of trust within the educational system, which forces parents to kind of take things into their own hands in a sense. I've heard like parents tell their children, don't let X, Y, and Z or teachers or adults talk to you in this way, and you can respond in this way, and I'll show up at the school this way if they treat you some kind of way, right? And so it's always, to me, I feel like we go into, and now we're like in schools kind of walking on thin ice before anything even happens, and very, what do I want to call it? Very self-conscious about how we appear to others. So then we are more inclined to be sheltered, like, and I can't think of the word, but really trying to stick up for ourselves without something happening. And so as a dean, how did you deal with parents that were combative when it came to their children's behavior, or maybe not wanting to accept that they have to be accountable for their behavior as well?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think every day is a different day in the world of discipline. And we would laugh and tease a lot about discipline just being that gray area, because you do have parents who are saying to do one thing, you have the code of conduct book in the district saying to do one thing, you have society saying to do another thing. So you're trying to deal with all of that and yet keep the peace, and more so keep the safety, at the level that it needs to be at your school. So any given day, one of the things that I would often say is every day is a new day, and you treat people's kids the way that you want to be treated and the way that you want other people to treat your children. With
Right.
that, those people or those children who come in a disrespectful manner, you often know that for a child to be disrespectful or defiant, there has to be a certain level of or not structure at home, because most kids who come from backgrounds that do provide a sense of structure or a level of structure, they're not going to do certain things and they're not going to say certain things. But as a parent of three Black boys, and I have three, I was a teen parent. So 3
Mm-hmm.
Black boys, young parent, you cannot tell me that we can't teach our kids how to be respectful, how to come to school and behave. And that was the same expectations I had for my children are the same
Mm-hmm.
expectations I had for the kids that I deal with on a regular basis. No matter how they came to school behaving, because it's our job as educators to always see the best in them, even when they are displaying their worst. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know somewhere down in you, you know how to behave. Even if you're not being shown that at home, I still know that there's a chance for you. There's hope. And so as a dean, I just continue to, do my best to be respectful and just show love on a daily basis. And sometimes that's hard. That is hard
Yes.
when you are being cursed at and threatened by a child. It's a really difficult situation. So, but I think having faith, being a person of faith, and just
Mm-hmm.
trusting God, that helps you get through a lot of those dark days. Because in discipline, there are a lot of dark days, and there's a lot that disciplinarians don't speak on and don't say anything about, because you are afraid of what a parent may say, what a parent may post on social media about you, the backlash that's going to come from
Mm-hmm.
your administrator or your district. So a lot of educators just sit and they just take and they take. But now I'm not in that. I'm out now, so I can kind of speak on some of the things that others, may not be able to speak on.
Yes. And we'll get that to that in a second. And yes, all of that, the backlash,
Oh,
it's kind of all self-contradictory, right? We're told as educators to, especially even those of us that went through school for a formal education background, we're taught classroom management, we're taught all of these things. We get professional development on, working with
mm-hmm,
children, social emotional learning, all these things, right? But it really, what I've noticed in my years of being an educator, like teachers do not really get the, well, how do you handle defiant adults which leads to defiant children.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it cycles back into, well, how are you building those relationships with those adults so they know that they
Mm-hmm.
can entrust you with their children, but also that you have high expectations of them, both them and their children, right, within their education. And I think it's really hard, like you stated, for us to be as assertive as we I feel that we could be in the world of education, just because there is so much, like, I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want
Mm-hmm.
this, and I don't want that, and there's just varying levels of, responsibility, and varying levels of, well, whose fault is what. And again, it's all parts, but like me and you both, I think, understand, and a lot of people who are probably listening understand, everything starts at home. So
Everything
it's like,
starts at home.
if we have the basic home training, if we
Yep.
have the basic skills, the basic, respect towards adults or elders, or however, or just towards people in general, right?
Yes.
You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
be disrespectful just for the sake of being disrespectful every day. And,
Absolutely.
I even talk with my own children, like, you guys, my kids are 8 and 11, and they just kind of go back and forth with each other all day long. And I'm like, this is your family. Like, you guys are the closest together. You got much of your life to spend together, and you need to be nice to each other. So even just
Yeah.
teaching like kindness and things like that, it just goes very foundational, and which leads
Yes.
through your life. And I think a
Yes.
lot of our families don't focus on that for
Yeah. And I'll
reasons.
say this, even with sibling rivalries at home, I know
Hmm.
my siblings and I, we were way worse than my kids are. We
Yeah.
fought, we did all the things. But we had a level of respect when we left
Hmm.
out of our mom's house. We knew
Yes.
not to go to that school and disrespect our teachers. The
Yes.
worst thing is that we wanted was a phone call home to mom, and
Hmm.
now we've gotten away from that. It's my philosophy, I don't care if you don't like me as an educator. You do
Hmm.
not have to like me, but respect, because
Hmm.
respect is going to take you a long way, and I'm going to do my best to respect you as well. So I don't care. I'm not saying educators are perfect, because
Right.
they're not, we're not. There's been times that I've had to, come back around full circle and apologize, maybe for things I've said, maybe for the way that I've acted.
Hmm.
However, when we're dealing with kids, I will stand, until the end of time and say, I don't care what an adult says to your child, does to your child should not disrespect that adult. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, when something happens, our kids need to know that we have their backs. We are the
Yeah.
person that's, standing in the gap for them. So when something doesn't go their way, even if they say, hey, my mom's coming, mom needs to go there with a respectful attitude as well. I'm coming.
Right.
That's, I'm coming about my baby. But it's the way that I show up as well. I think the
Right.
key thing is showing up, but then the way we show up, because a lot of times, they're already expecting Black parents to come in an aggressive manner,
Mhm.
acting all out of sorts, but that's not always the case.
Right.
It's the approach, again, just showing up and just letting people know, others know, that we are going to show up for our kids. I don't care if my kid is right, wrong, or whatever. I am going to show up for my child, and I
Right.
think that's what parents need to do as well. Stand up for your child, show up for your child. But when your child is wrong, your child is wrong. When your
Yes.
child needs to be disciplined, your child needs to be disciplined. And I think that's kind of what we've gone away from now, because there are so many parents that want to be their kids' friends. I
Hmm.
don't want to be your friend. I'm not your friend. I am your mom, and I'm
Right.
mama. That's who I
Yes.
am. And I'm going to check you when you need to be checked. And again, we've gotten so far away from that now. When parents are afraid to discipline their kids and check their kids, then that makes, educators and everyone else afraid as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So the parenting styles, just the general home structure, like you mentioned before, it all ties in. And,
Absolutely.
just the level of respect again, too, when we're talking on the approach of the educator, as the adult, you're the adult in the room, right? And especially if you're working with littles, middle schools, high schoolers, yeah, they could test you, but elementary and middles, they're still developing and growing their social emotional
Mhm.
skills, and so as they are in high school. And so I do feel a lot of some of the responses of educators, that is theirs to own too when it comes to working with their children. I'm working with
Absolutely.
all children, right? We have to, if we're asking kids to have self-regulation skills and being able to
Remain
manage, our
professional.
behavior, we need to remain professional. Don't crack under pressure. It's okay to cry in the closet later, but don't
Do
let those
not let
kids
them
see
see you
you.
sweat.
Yes, because they will take that, and run with it. And I remember when I taught high school, especially the younger, the high school girls, they would challenge me and they would like to challenge
Absolutely.
me. And, I had a student that just intentionally tried to do something just to get kicked out of class. So I would, have them leave. And I would tell them all up front, listen, I don't kick people out of class. Like, you just want to leave because you don't want to be here, but you're going to stay here with me and we're going to learn some things today. And the
Hmm.
girls, at one point I said, hey, if you want to be petty, we'll be petty today. And like, we'll go
We'll
back
be
and forth
petty
for a little
together.
bit, but I bet you I'll win. So, or we could just not waste time and just keep going, and let's, learn something fun and get something out of your education today at school. So, just the
Absolutely.
approach of how, we work with the different age groups, and same with my children, my third and fifth grader is my third grader, my boy, he, struggles a little bit. In last year kind of gave his teachers a hard time. But, I have to remind them he's autistic and
Hmm.
he's ADHD and like all these things. And it's like, it's not, a lot of stuff is not intentional. Some stuff it is because he's
Uh-huh.
learning your pattern of behavior. And so, but I will work with you to work with him. And, we're not going to get to a point where he's going to be kicked out of school because of his behavior and some things that he may not have full control over. So,
Yeah.
again, like
And
you
let me
said,
say
parents
this
showing
with
up.
the you mentioned that your baby was autistic and
Mm-hmm.
ADHD. I do
Mm-hmm.
want to put a pin in there's a difference, the autistic
Yes.
versus the ADHD.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
right now we've gotten to a point in education where having ADHD has given these kids a rite of passage. And
Right.
that's not so.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD does not mean that you come to my school and you terrorize my school just
Exactly.
because you're ADHD or you have
Right.
a 504 plan.
Right.
And again, we've allowed these things as a society, we've allowed these things to happen. Now, there are some babies who are truly, as you stated, being on the autism spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
some of those babies really have defining needs and disabilities that need to have the proper treatment and
Yes.
the proper resources, and teachers need to have the proper techniques on how to deal
Yes.
with those babies. But at the same time, I think we've just taken ADHD and we have just
Ran with it.
those some of those babies just terrorize schools nowadays. And
Yeah.
I think one of the other things being with that, coming from a disciplined background, everybody that comes to school now, and we normally tease and say, if you have an E or 5 behind your name, that you can come and do anything and say anything because you only have 10 days. I've never
Mm.
seen a law that's never been revisited, like and I can't think of the name of it right now, but kids getting only 10 days. I'm not a fan of kids being suspended from school.
Oh yeah, no.
However, 10 days is not a lot when you have kids coming that are disrespecting teachers, putting their hands on teachers,
Mm-hmm.
taunting other kids, just tearing up our schools. So we need to go back and revisit some of these education laws that we have, that we've given kids a rite of passage. Just because you're SLD, just because you're 504, just because you're these things, you can come to school and
Yeah.
just behave the way that you want to. And the first thing the parents say, he got ADHD. Okay,
Yeah.
what does that mean? He can
Yep.
still come and sit down and behave,
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
those are just some of the things that I think trying to get parents more involved, and it's hard. It's a task getting parents involved, but once we do get them on our sides, then some of those things, you can work through some of the things that we've allowed to just turn the wrong way, I would say now.
Right. And yeah, and I definitely agree because I do feel that a lot of parents and educators use special needs or 504 plans, ADHD, all those things, right, as a means of an excuse or to excuse a behavior. And, I'll even admit as a parent in the past, like I used to be like, oh, well, that's because of, but it's like, but no, am I doing what I need to do to help him navigate those behaviors
Absolutely.
and redirect himself? And you have to do it at home too, if you want them to
Hmm.
do it at school. And it's not going to just be the school environment that's, able to provide the end all be all skills and strategies for them to, be able to be calm in a learning environment. And the other thing kind of on that, and then we'll kind of move forward is, I dislike how the education system lowers the bars for our students with in special education
Hmm.
or who have a 504 plan because of their disabilities and all of these things. And I've even had to advocate for my own children. My daughter has a 504 plan for ADHD. She has ADHD, and my son for his autism, he does have an IEP. And I had to let them know, like, please be sure they are still exposed to grade level
Set the
content. Like,
standard.
I don't want him to, yes, he's behind a little bit academically, but I don't want you to just keep him there. Like, let's move forward. And because he has to be
Challenge
able
him.
to, yeah, and challenge him, right? And a lot of
Challenge
these
my
kids,
baby.
especially those with autism, are very creative and they are very intellectual. It's just the approach of how you are teaching them. And are you, I had to remind my son's teacher, like, he's very particular with certain things. So yes, you may have to differentiate a little bit deeper with him to be able to provide him some visuals that's going to be appealing to him to want to do the task at hand that you're asking. And of course, that's a conversation for another day, but
But it's
differentiation
true.
and
And that's a big one,
mhm,
differentiation.
yeah.
You must be willing to do those things. And again, set high expectations, because
Hmm.
we want kids to rise to those expectations. And I
Hmm.
don't care what you have. I don't care if you're SLD, ADHD, on the spectrum. I still need to have a standard for you
Yes.
to rise to. And I think
Yeah.
if we do that, most kids will rise to those expectations.
Absolutely. Yep. And us as parents too, we got to stop making excuses for them or for
Absolutely.
ourselves. If we are not comfortable in a certain area, we have to do what we need to do for ourselves to learn certain skills as well to be able to help our kids. So, um,
Exactly. And I think because in society, when they go out in the real world,
mhm,
nobody's going to stop and say, hey, do you have an IEP?
right.
Nobody's asking those questions. So when we set kids up and we make that their life, then we're setting them up for failure.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
They need to know that they can rise above anything that's on a piece of paper.
Mhm.
They can rise above those things.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit earlier that you are out of the field of education now, and you are putting your talents to other work. So what is it that you're
Yes.
doing?
Yes. So right now I am working on building a consulting business. So I have my Mrs. Educator, and I'm working with a couple of other professionals, Black ladies. We're getting together and coming up with different professional developments that we can offer different districts and different states. But my main baby right now is my mentoring group. I have a group, Girls on the Rise Mentoring, and that's one of the things that I just strive to help Black girls. It's for girls in particular, Black and brown girls, to just rise above all the obstacles that they face and just being better versions of themselves. Because as Black women, we're often stigmatized. We're loud, we're aggressive, we're all these things, and they
Right.
forget the talented part. We're talented, we're smart enough, we can do anything that anyone else can do. But it's so important that we instill those things in our young girls earlier, because
Right.
now you have, I watched the video someone sent me today. What's the rapper, the red girl or something, but she put your
Sexy
hands
Red.
on your knees. Yeah,
Yes.
her. So put your hands on your knees, and they, to me, it seemed as if this was maybe a home daycare, and it was some little girls in there, and they were putting their hands on their knees, and they were, doing the thing, and it's like, okay,
Hmm.
what are we doing here? This is
Yep.
this isn't right. This isn't what we should be teaching. So again, just
Hmm.
teaching the girls to, to love themselves and how to navigate in, places and spaces that may not necessarily represent us. You
Yes.
may be the only one in the room, and if so, how do you navigate that? How do you behave? How do you present yourself in a room when you're the only one? Because oftentimes, even for myself, there were many times,
Yes.
that I was the only one in the room, and being the only one in the room, most people will try to silence you or negate what you know, make you seem as if you don't know what you know.
Right.
But my job is to help empower the girls now, and again, get them to love themselves, love who they are, love the skin that they're in. We don't have to go and change our hair. We don't have to do anything. We can be natural and still be beautiful and still be talented. So that's just a couple of the things that I'm doing now. Another initiative that I would like to start is Parents on the Rise, because my mentoring group is Girls on the Rise. And
Okay.
right now I'm looking to start Parents on the Rise, and just providing, just education to parents.
Yeah.
Parenting, there's no book, or there are books on parenting, but there's no one true book to say that if I follow XYZ, my kids are going to turn out great. They're going to have a
Right.
great day in school every day. That's not so. So my thing is, just as much as I want to empower girls to be the best version of themselves, I want to empower parents as well.
Right.
You can still be a good single parent. My mom was a single mom. So we all have greatness inside of us. We just need support, and a lot of times to know that we're not the only ones, because a
Right.
lot of parents just, feel like they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know enough about the system to go in and ask questions, or they don't know how to show up. So if I can be an advocate and I can help them, with how to show up or when to show up, questions to ask, those are just some of the things that I want to do.
Yes. And that, I think it's all really important. And thank you so much for offering, at least your program to your girls. And I'm excited for you to introduce the parents. I think it's really important. Again, like we just talked, there is certain things for us to like really kind of learn and understand. And it's interesting that you mentioned the sexy red thing, because I, speak on a lot about the influences of social media and the influences of, just the world in which we live in. And it's nothing new that music and culture influences
Exactly.
our behavior, but it's technology in 2024, it's so rapid, and it's so
It's right
like
there,
in your face all day long. And so
instantaneously.
instantaneous, and I talk about instant gratification, like it's right there. And some people, when they're putting it on, and or with, if they're using that song, right, but they're not even switching the words out of the song. And so it's like, if you
Exactly.
really listen, then that artist in general is not somebody who should be exposed to children. Please, parents, please
Like your
stop letting
little
your children
toddlers, your
listen to
four or
this
five
girl.
year. Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
no
so
slight against her.
no,
She's doing what
nothing.
she does. It's
But she's an
parents.
adult. Yeah.
Exactly. Parents have to be
Yes.
able to filter. And a lot of
Hmm.
times we're afraid to filter because we're doing the things. And again,
Yes.
I used to be in the world. I love to
Yes.
dance. I love rap.
Yes.
I love all types of
Me
rap
too.
music.
Hmm.
But I don't want my grandbabies listening to some of that. I don't want my
Yeah.
kids, I didn't want my kids listening to some of that. So
Yeah.
now, again, as parenting, I don't care if you're gentle parenting, whatever that means.
Yeah.
If you're doing all of those things, just make sure you censor, what
Hmm.
your kids are listening to, what your
Yeah.
kids see out there, because we can, protect them from a lot that's going on. Those kids with the sexy red girl, and she's not the only one. They're singing
Right.
all
No, there's
all
so many.
types of
Yeah.
songs.
Hmm.
Um, But if they can sit there and they can sing those songs, then when I put a book in
Right.
front of them, I need
Right.
for them to read this book. I need
Right.
for that little
Exactly.
baby to know how to tie their shoes. And I just
Yes.
got on to my grandbaby just yesterday. I think yesterday he turned 7. And I was on him, he loves the Roblox and all. I mean, can do anything on a computer, but
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't able to tie his shoe. And I had an issue with that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what are we doing here? And I told my
Yep.
son, I was like, next week or this week here, that's his job. He needs to learn
Yep.
how to tie his shoe. So don't tell me I can navigate Roblox and I can sing Sexy Red and I can sing all of these other Kodak and all of these other people and I can't read a book.
Right.
Are we serious? I can't
That
tie my
part.
shoe.
Yes.
No, come on. We got
Yep.
people. We need to do better.
Yes,
We need to do
absolutely.
better.
Yes, absolutely. And even for my daughter, who's 11, and I don't know if a lot of people's really paid attention over the years, but radio has really just gotten rid of censorship. They do not censor anything. Most
Even
things,
commercials.
even commercial, it's very like
TV.
vulgar. Even on any of the social media stuff that they're watching, like I tell my daughter, she's 5th grade, no YouTube, no social media, you're not on that because it's not for you. And then if certain songs come on the radio and she's singing, I was like, oh, we got to turn this, and she's like, why? I'm like, no, it's inappropriate. And then the question is, well, why is it inappropriate? Right. And so if us as parents are not ready to have that conversation with our children of
But we
why this is
need to.
inappropriate, but we need to,
We need to.
especially our preteens and our girls and our boys, because they are so exposed to adult content so much earlier, it's very accessible, that they need to understand what it is that they're looking at, because they need to
Exactly.
know boundaries, they need to know what is it that they're doing and why they're doing it, and who is that audience really geared for. It's not for you. So really kind of
Exactly.
just sticking in on that. So I know we could
And
definitely
it's
talk
it's
for a
not one
long
of
time
those
on that.
like the things now, it's not so much do as I say, not what
Mm-hmm.
I do, because a lot of times a lot of the things parents are involved in
Mm-hmm.
those things. And if the
Yes.
parents not, if your child is going to visit your next door neighbor or your sister,
Mm-hmm.
that may be going on in your sister's house, but because it
Yes.
goes on in your house doesn't make it right in my house. So we do need to have those conversations and explain things to kids now, the right and the wrong, and why we feel that it's right and wrong. And again, for my house, I used to tell my boys, you don't come and tell me what your friend is doing or what his parents allow them to
Mm-hmm.
do. I'm telling you what's right for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think being a young mom, I was a mom at 15, and my kids are, by the goodness of God, they're all doing well. And not to say that they're perfect, but I had standards. My husband and I had standards. And again, we would say what you can and what you can't do. And a lot of times it wasn't a whole lot of why. Now everybody, the why is a big thing now, but
Yeah.
when I tell you, I'm telling you for a good reason.
Yeah.
Now you
Yes.
guys are having to
It's
explain the
the
why, which is,
pushback. Yeah. The why?
yeah,
For why? Yes.
yeah,
And
not
one
in
last
my
thing.
house.
Yes, I'm right on that one. And me and my children's father, we divorced in 2017. And so again, I have young kids. And so then as co-parenting, right, do you have the same expectations for your children? And especially when we're talking about these topics around music
Hmm.
and censorship and those things. And also on the same academic stance, do you both value their academic performance the same way? And I always say this to remind people that I on my platform am not pushing public education, but at the end of the day, a lot of us rely on public education because we just cannot do other options for various
Yeah,
reasons. And so it's like you have to be on the same page with your co-parent if you have one, and like the goals for
absolutely.
your children are the same. And so me and my ex-husband, it took us a little bit to get there, but we're there now, which I'm thankful for. And I think that partnership between you and your co-parent, that's involved with your children's, academics and learning, as well as you two both in line with the teacher or the school that you're with, is
Absolutely.
very important.
It's needed. It's needed. And you
Mhm.
can, on that note, in education, anyone that's in the classroom and for students who are dealing with co-parenting households, you can always tell, okay, you were with parent X this week, or you with
Yep.
parent Y this week.
Yep.
And you could always tell, and parents don't understand that. That's when, like you said, we all need to come together. We're all coming together for a common purpose. And although you want to be daddy Disney this week and mom Disney next week, we
Hmm.
can't have that. We need to all be on the same page again, because education is so fragile now. Um, we just don't know where it's going to end up, especially here in Florida. I can't speak for other states, but right
Yeah.
now, if we don't do our best to make sure our kids are getting a good education and we're all on common grounds, we
Right.
don't know what the future is going to be. The future is looking bleak right now. When
Yeah.
it comes to education and the number of students who are dropping out, the number of students who are failing, and students who are just being pushed along, just to be pushed along. And then when they get to eighth grade here, I can't go to ninth grade because I don't have enough units or credits. So we all need to be on a common page to know what's next steps for our students. And
Absolutely.
again, co-parenting, any kind of parenting, we just all need to be together.
Yep. Agreed. And yes, that, what is the future going to look like? Because our kids, like, and that's what I try to remind people. Our kids are the ones that is supposed to keep this world that we have alive. Like, and clearly we have issues globally within our world, and
Mm-hmm.
and we have them within the US, within our states, our cities, all the things, right? And so wherever they're going to end up as adults, they still need to be prepared for the world that we live in, and to potentially,
Socially.
yes, socially, definitely. Just to know foundational, core reading, math, all of those things, right? Just to be effective citizens, and to help us better the world that we're in. Because I too, with you, am very weary on, what is this going to look like in the next couple
Exactly.
of years, regardless of what system of education we're in. We still
Yeah,
need to
because
have
yeah, I'm with you on that.
people.
I would
Hmm.
never sit and say private school is
Yeah.
better,
Yeah. Me
homeschool
neither.
is better.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that either is better.
No.
I can only speak on public education because that's the field that I've been in. But
Right.
even being, in education 21 years, I've seen students come from private school who are just as far behind
Hmm.
as our kids who are in public school. And the same thing with homeschool kids,
Yes.
come in and they may be behind as well. So it doesn't matter. I think at the end of the day, it matters again what happens at home, the
Yes.
exposure that we
Yes.
give our kids at home, putting books in their faces, reading to our kids, having conversations with our kids, and a lot
Hmm.
of times just sitting down, listening to our kids and letting them know that I hear you.
Hmm.
I hear you. There's so much that's going on in the world today, and they do need to know that they are being heard. Because if you don't listen,
Yeah.
somebody else is going to listen, and
Right.
somebody else is going to teach our kids what we're not teaching our kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed. So, as we wrap up, so you published a new book, and it
Yes,
is out. And
yes.
yes, go ahead and explain a little bit about your book and the topics that you touched on in there.
All right. So I was able to publish a book, and it's called Public Education, the Modern Day Lynching Tree. Um, and I'm so excited. The book actually came out of, I would say, pain that I experienced while in administration here in Ocala. Um, yeah, there were a lot of white rooms that I was in, and we don't have, I think here in Marion County, we don't have a lot of African American administrators. So getting up that administrative ladder is sometimes it can take a toll on you. And then once you get there, you're faced with so much adversity. And I experienced that. And there was one school that I was in. Thank you so much. There was one school that I was in, a high school, and the principal, she was not nice. She and her, staff, they were not nice. And it was predominantly white school that I was at. So through that experience, I was at the point where, okay, if I don't leave here, something's going to happen and it's not going to be good. And let me back up. Before I entered administration, I had a friend that told me, he said, either you're going to end up being a drunk or you're going to end up having being prescribed medicine. And I thought it was a joke. I laugh, and I know people who hear this today, they're going to be able to, agree to what's going on in the educational world. But in that particular environment that I was in with that principal, I actually ended up, going to see a doctor. I had to get a therapist because of some of the stuff that I experienced as an administrator. And once that happened, I'm like, you know what? I love me some me. So
Right.
dealing with this right here and all the stuff that's going on in that unhappy place, it was just time for me to exit. And again, that helped me. I've always wanted to write a book in my experiences in education, but that propelled me to write the book. Some of the things that I experienced there, being a Black educator, one of the only ones there, seeing a lot of the things that the Black students, the minority students were experiencing. And that again helped propel me to write the book Public Education, a Modern Day Lynching Tree. And again, in that book, it's my experiences that I've seen, some of the experiences that some of my friends have gone through, having conversations with different people about what they've gone through. And I think
Mhm.
any table that we sit at as minorities, we can all share some of the stories. And
Right.
my goal was to just get out my experiences again and get people to the point where we start speaking up for some of the things that we're going through. We don't just have to sit back and take the disrespect as administrators. Again, I was an
Right.
administrator, so I don't have to sit back and be looked down, talked down to just because I'm the only one in the room. I'm just as educated as you are, and
Right.
you are going to respect me. And if you can't respect me, then I'm going to have to find my exit to keep my peace because I love me. I love me
Mhm.
some me, and I know what I bring to the table. So if I
Right.
can't bring it to your table, guess what? I'm going to create a table. God's going to create a table, and I'm going to walk, and that table, that's going to be a good table.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how all of that came to be. And again,
Okay.
I think for any educator that reads that book, I just want them to sit down and to know you're not the only one. And being not the only one, again, we just need to start, coming together, supporting one another. Um, I'm not smarter than anyone. I believe that there's always learning for me, there's always learning for others, but sometimes we are held back by certain people who don't want us to be principals, certain people who don't want us to be superintendents, certain people who just don't want us to be in certain rooms. And I
Yeah.
think we have to start walking into that, and we need to start just speaking up again and creating those avenues for ourselves. And with that, just showing our kids and others that we can be anything that we want to be. With the
Yeah.
help of God and trusting God, He's not going to fail us. So I'm not going to sit and be abused by you. I'm not going to be choked by you. I'm not going to, be held back or held down by any individual.
Right.
So that's just
Yes.
my
And
take
that's
on
so
public
powerful.
education in the modern day literature.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so I will be sure to tag your website on this episode for those that are interested in viewing. So it is on mrseducator.com for those that want to take a look at all the things that Rometha offers, as well as her book. And so, yeah, just kind of, again, looking at the topics that you have listed in here, especially the
The,
standardized
the,
testing and teacher
the
burnout. Like I
disres-
do,
mm-hmm,
and the disrespect, as we talked on, and the social media challenges, like all of the things, right, that we spoke on today. It's just very relevant. And then for our, teachers of color that, don't feel included in the work that they do or
mm-hmm.
wanted or welcomed, this would be a good read. What do you say to those that may not have lived the lifestyle of what we are, what's being reflected in the book? Like, what do you think that they could learn out of this book?
One of the biggest things for me with those who have not lived the white styles, in particular white people, it's like, listen, just stop and listen to your coworker, watch
Mhm.
some of the things that happen, because I had so many people, or many people that would come to me and say, I can't believe they said that to you, or I can't believe they're doing that to you. It's like people see the things that are happening, but they just
Mhm.
sit back and don't speak up on it. So your inability to speak up on my behalf or someone's behalf when you see them being mistreated, you're just as big as the problem.
Yeah.
You're part of the problem. So again, we need to come together. It's bigger than us. It's
Yes.
just not about black, white, Hispanic, and all of that. We're in a field where we're trying to educate kids to be better
Yes.
versions of themselves,
Mhm.
and they can go on and continue in society and create jobs and places for other kids to come and go. That's what I would say to other people. Like, you need to start listening,
Yes.
and then you do need to start speaking up when you see wrong, and don't be a part of the problem. Don't be a
Yes.
part of the problem, because there are so many times people sit back and they allow things to happen. And it's just not right. It's just not
Yeah.
right. So, and there are so many things that, that I can say. There's so many experiences that I have lived, and you can't put your life story in a book. But the book just illustrates some of the things that, I've had to live out. And again, just knowing some of the things that others are living out too. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, we all matter. Black women matter. We're underrepresented, but we
Mhm.
matter. We matter in all of the places, all of the spaces, and we just need to speak up and, partner up with other people and come together as a whole to make education just better than what it is right now.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And just kind of wrapping up, those that do see things, I think it's up to us to kind of, speak up and advocate. If you're advocating for your students, if you're advocating for your peer, your coworker, and when something isn't right, I think regardless of whatever it is, but especially in these topics, because again, we're in 2024, and I am so tired of seeing just such a political battle between a race of people, like people. We are
Exactly.
people at the end of the
We are
day. And yes,
people.
we are all here through various reasons. We have arrived at this point for various reasons, but I think it's time to, really just let's move forward, and let's, at the end of the day, in the world of education, we're here to educate our kids. Let's
Educate
get them
our
educated.
kids.
All of
That's
them,
right. And it's like,
all
it's
the
not
same.
about us. It's
Yeah.
about them and
Yeah.
next steps for our kids, because the last thing that we want to see, or that I want to see, is our kids being illiterate. You
Hmm.
have teenagers and adults who are illiterate because
Yep.
they're not being treated, the way
Yes.
that they should be treated. They're not
Yes.
the high expectations are not being set for them. If they come from an impoverished background, then I
Hmm.
don't believe that they can learn. No,
Yes.
everybody can learn,
Yes.
and again, it's about just making our world a better place. And it doesn't matter, again, black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. If you have a heart for people and a heart for kids, then you'll come together to the table to figure out plans and strategies, things that can be executed to just make education a better fit for our kids today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely
You're
have to connect
welcome.
more on some more conversation. And so, to those that are watching today, please be sure to follow Ms. Rometha Gilmore, Mrs. Educator, on her social media platforms, as well as visit her website to see her book. And again, like, follow, and share both myself, Kylie Elizabeth, the virtual educator, and Mrs. Educator. And thank you
Thank
guys so
you.
much. And I hope
Thank
you
you
have a
so
great day.
much.
Thank you.